So Kamala Harris has come out in the last couple of weeks and said she no longer supports a ban on fracking in the United States. Now, I don't know why she changed her mind. She's a politician, so maybe it's popular, or maybe she actually looked at the devastating impact it would have on the U.S. economy if that were to occur. And that's what we're going to talk about. What would happen in the United States if we banned fracking? Fracking accounts for nearly 80% of the current oil and natural gas production in the United States. It doesn't account for 80% of the wells. It accounts for 80% of the production. It's still a relatively small percentage of total wells, and that's because we have almost 1 million wells in the United States that have been drilled over the last 100-something years. So first we'll talk about production and oil and gas pricing. If you take the average decline curve of unconventional wells in the United States, which are wells that are fracked, and apply that, you would see that in the first year after a fracking ban, the United States would lose approximately 2 million barrels a day of production. In the second year, we would lose 1.7 million barrels a day of production. With those types of decreases, we would see pricing similar to what we saw in 2022. We would see oil $120, $130 a barrel. Gas would be $5 on a national average. By the end of the second year, you're looking at gas prices on a national average between $6 and $7 a gallon. That's on a national average. So that means well over $10 a gallon in California, and probably $5 a gallon in the places where it's cheapest. Natural gas prices would go through the roof, north of $10 an MCF, which is about where they topped out in 2022. They would go through the roof. By the end of the second year, you're probably looking at $15 natural gas, which means your utility rates for electricity, if your electricity in your home is produced by natural gas, that bill is probably at minimum quadrupling, maybe quintupling. Now, these aren't like dire prediction type numbers. These are actual realistic numbers if you sit down and look at where production will be and where demand will be, because you have to understand demand is continuing to rise as our production falls. And the truth is, I'm being very conservative. Everything I just said could actually happen in a much tighter windows, because futures traders, would likely jack those prices up much more quickly than just the fundamentals of the market. We would need countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, Iraq, Venezuela. We would need countries like that to produce more oil, to lower our prices. And they likely wouldn't, because they would be making a fortune, which would only empower their militaries and their aspirations for world dominance going forward. So this would also be a major national security issue. As far as the economy goes, the U.S. oil and gas industry accounts for about 11 million jobs in the United States, and that is because for every job created in the oil and gas industry, there are 3.7 other jobs created outside the industry. So we are probably looking at a job loss of somewhere in the ballpark of between 6 and 7 million people in job losses. The industry accounts for about 7.6 or 7.7% of GDP, puts $2 trillion towards GDP annually. That would be reduced by at least 70%. The amount of income loss from laid off and fired workers in the industry and industries associated with the oil and gas industry would be about $600 billion a year. That's in payroll. That's a loss that comes out of people's pockets. That's how much less money workers would be making. So unless we had like amazing, a time of boom in other technologies, like maybe AI or something, we would definitely slide into a pretty significant recession unless there was some other industry that was just so robust that it kept us out of it. The cost of renewable energy would skyrocket at a rate we have never seen before. And that is because the products we use to create renewable energy are oil and gas products. And oil prices would be at all-time historic highs and beyond. In addition to that, almost all renewable energy requires a backup source of power, and in most places of the United States, that's natural gas, and natural gas would be the highest it's ever been in history as well. So to build the renewable energy would be so expensive that utility companies would have to go back to their local and state governments and request very large rate hikes just so they could afford to build it, just so they could turn it on. So having renewable energy, unless you had solar at home, would not protect you from any of these wild price increases from the ban of fracking. It would hurt you just as much as it would hurt those who aren't on renewable energy. It wouldn't happen immediately, but by the time you got to the third year, banning of hydraulic fracturing, the impact it would have on the economy and our national security and energy security would be as bad as losing the entire U.S. auto industry. And I say all that, like, you need to understand, if this happened, I would be so rich. I would make so much money. Because just my existing oil and natural gas production that I have in my company would become so valuable, I wouldn't need to go find any more oil. I wouldn't need to go find any more natural gas. Just my base production that I have right now would make me and my partners extremely wealthy. But I have no interest in gaining wealth on the poverty and struggles of others. I have no interest in that. So maybe Kamala Harris, got advice from people who know and understand the impacts of this, and maybe that's what caused her to change her mind, or maybe it's just politically expedient for her. Who knows? Who cares? Regardless, even if she still supported it, she couldn't legally ever do it. So it's not a thing we need to worry about. Thanks.